In the heat of a hot summer's day, there's little that's as refreshing as an ice-cold root beer float. Flavored by the roots and herbs of local plants, the distinct root beer flavor is a strong American tradition. But to fully understand this uniquely American dessert, I'm going to try and make it entirely from scratch. But first, the root beer. The key to its flavor is the roots of the sassafras tree. When most root beer today is artificially flavored, I'm going to stick to the traditional recipe. The sassafras tree only grows in the eastern US, so I'll need to travel to Michigan for this one. Alright, so we just took a cruise across Lake Michigan to get over here to get some sassafras. It's been horrible. I've thrown up like at least 8 times, and that's probably the highlight of the trip. Because after I throw up, I actually feel decent. And guess what? We get to do it again and come back a little bit later tonight. Now on the other side of Lake Michigan, we met up with Lisa Rose, an expert forager.
So here you have one of the younger sassafras trees, the nice elongated stem. And then you'll see it's got different shaped leaves. And it tastes like Fruit Loops. My daughter calls it the Fruit Loop tree.
Kind of minty a little bit.
That would be the saffrole, the volatile oils that you would get out of the root.
So how many different types of leaves are there?
About 3 to 5 different shapes. You'll get the mittens going to the left and to the right, and then this 3-lobe shape here, kind of like the ghost, my kids like to call them. So as you can see right here in this cluster of trees, a mature sassafras right here grows to be about 30 feet tall.
And these are some of the younger saplings?
Yeah, so these are the saplings of the sassafras. You really don't need a lot of plant material to do this. And you know, there are a couple different ways to work with the roots of the sassafras to harvest them to make your root beer. And you really don't need to disturb the bark of, you know, a mature tree. This cleaned and chopped will produce 4 cups worth of simple syrup after you simmer down the root and create a tea infusion to make a simple syrup. You don't want to cut into the root. It's a really soft root. And you'll kind of put your finger down in there to see how the root goes and to sense what direction it's running.
It's funny, it just automatically smells just like root beer.
It does. So the woods gives us lots of different flavors. If you want to add additional flavor to your root beer, we're also standing right along the edges of a beautiful stand of wintergreen. It's a low-growing plant cover, very unassuming, but notably identified with its shiny leaves and small clusters of 3 to 5, and they're evergreen across the winter. This is all wintergreen. You'll actually see that it's got a couple of the berries here still, which is kind of awesome.
Oh, they're minty.
Yeah, actually they should be a little even more sweet almost, but the leaf is definitely the more aromatic part of the plant and traditionally flavored similar to your wintergreen gum.
Thanks to Lisa's guidance, I was able to forage the crucial sassafras root and wintergreen leaves needed to flavor my root beer. Now I'm one step closer to being able to finally make my root beer float. And on our way home, we lucked out because the wind died down and the voyage back was much less nauseating. Next up, I'll need a sugar to sweeten my root beer, and eventually my ice cream.
We're in northern Minnesota, where my brother and his family have been making maple syrup for the past couple years, and they're gonna show me how it's done.
So this end goes in the tree and this sticks out, and then this will just go over it and hang on it like that against the tree. So this is how we collect it.
We're drilling to a depth of 2 inches here and a slightly up slope, and then we have it marked here for 2 inches. So give it a try here. When you get it up, make sure you get the hole clean so they don't have any sawdust in there so that it interferes with the flow of the sap. That'd be perfect.
And what we're doing then is we drill a hole into the tree and we're basically severing those straws. So when the sap goes up, instead of continuing up the tree, it comes out the spile and we collect it in the bag.
There's a little bit of sweetness to it. I think I'm tasting more of the sawdust than the actual syrup. The sap tends to flow best on the southern side of the tree, where it receives the most heat from the sun throughout the day.
I think it's good. Okay. We're good. You tapped your first tree.
Yay. After tapping the trees, we took a break while the day warmed up. The sap flows best in the warmer temperatures, so after a warm afternoon, we came back and collected the sap. Once the sap was collected into buckets, we transferred it into a large barrel with a net to strain out any ice. Once the barrel was full, it drained down a long hose that ran down the hill to another barrel in the back of the truck, saving us the hassle of carrying the sap all the way down the hill. Once transferred to the truck, it was brought back to the house to boil it down. The sap is strained once more to remove any dirt or particles that might have gotten in. Then in a large pan, all the sap is added, and the wood stove is lit. Over the next several hours, the sap will slowly boil down until it reaches a more amber color. Before it gets too thick, it will be drained and brought inside for the final boiling, where it can be controlled more closely.
The hydrometer is just going to check the percentage of sugar in it, and so this will float in this cup here based on how much sugar is in it. And we want it at this hot test line right here, this red line. So we want this to float with the syrup being right there. We are actually right at the red line there, and now it's syrup. So now we're going to scoop it in, fill the jar up till we have about a 1/4 inch headspace.
Okay. All right, and then in 24 hours, we'll have a maple syrup.
Next, if I want any carbonation to my soda, I'm gonna need some yeast to release CO2 into my beverage. So for a starter culture, I visited Caleb Levar at Fair State Brewing.
Yeast are everywhere. In a brewery like this, they're probably floating all over. They're on your hands, they're in the barrels, they're everywhere. So we've got one here from the headwaters of the Mississippi. We were able to isolate some yeast off of them. These are these milky white or sort of cream colored colonies. They should be fairly smooth, not have a whole lot of surface features on them. And you pick one of those colonies and you streak it out on another plate, just like that. And you keep doing that until you can look at that plate and see that there's only one type of colony on there. That means there's only one organism there, and you have that in pure culture then. And so what you'll want to do is sterilize a paper clip just by holding it in a fire. And you'll simply grab one of these colonies, and then you can dip that colony into some sugar water. And you'll want to wait then until that's foamy and you have enough yeast cells to actually carbonate your root beer appropriately.
Is there anything I should be careful for when I bottle it?
Basically, those yeast are going to want to take all of the sugar that's left in your root beer and convert that to CO2 and to ethanol. And so it wants to take your root beer and make beer. Eventually that CO2 is going to build up to too high of a pressure in that bottle, and it's going to blow that bottle up, and it's going to make a terrible mess.
Now with all the ingredients collected, it's time to combine them all and brew my root beer.
Some sharper knives. Now that it's boiled for 20 minutes, it's kind of leached out all the flavor from the roots and herbs, so now I just gotta strain it. We just have kind of a sassafras tea left, so now I'm just gonna add the maple syrup to help sweeten it and turn more into a root beer. Tastes like root beer, just a little flat, which means next I need to add the yeast. And now, seal the cap, agitate the yeast. All right, just gotta let it sit and ferment. In a few days, we'll have root beer.
And while that carbonates, I can get started on the ice cream.
That's really friendly. Ready? Hey, don't eat my pants. Oh god. Oh god. Oh god. Jeez. Hello.
This is my oldest daughter, Ashley, and she's going to show you how to milk a goat. We have our blue spray, which is called chlorhexidine, and we spray that once on each teat, and then we have dairy towels, which we wipe the chlorhexidine off, and then we take this strainer and cup, and we take a squirt out of each teat to make sure there's no clumps of milk or no discoloration, make sure it's all good to go with the rest of the milk.
Is there any risk of it kicking me?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that was the problem with the cows. I was always afraid it was going to kick me. This is a lot easier than milking a cow, and a lot cleaner. Is there any risk of them pooping on me? All right, so I milked the goat.
It was a bit easier than I expected. A lot easier than milking a cow. It was a lot cleaner and had a lot better success with it. I'd say I did a pretty good job. What would you say?
Decent.
To turn the fresh milk I collected into ice cream, I headed to Izzy's to get some help from Shannon.
We are fortunate enough to have our ice cream base made for us at a farm. It's our recipe, but we don't have the cows here to do it. And so we start with the base, and then depending on what the flavor is, there are some ingredients to add beforehand. Some of them get mixed in afterwards once it's frozen. Once it's in that state, that's about the temperature of soft serve, so maybe around 24 to 28 degrees when it comes just right out of the machine. And then it has to be blast frozen, so it goes down to -40 overnight, so it's just hard as a rock. And then we slowly temper that ice cream back up to 0 degrees when you finally get a scoop of it out here. I mean, it sounds like you've got a really great source for goat's milk. Happy goats make happy goat's milk. The trick too is, I think you guys are you gonna shake it as well? I think that personally, I think the last time I shook ice cream to make it was quite a few years ago, but consistent temperature across the whole thing is gonna be helpful as well, instead of just if you just get one icy chunk, that could cause problems, and then making sure that all your ingredients are kind of bound together in some way. And you've got maple syrup in there as well, making sure that doesn't seize probably. If it's hot in the cold, this might cause you some grief. But yeah, blending that really well as well.
Now I've seen how they do it on the large scale at Izzy's. I'm gonna do it a little bit smaller. And there are a lot of different machines that can be used to make ice cream, but that's core. It's a pretty simple concept. You basically just need ice, cream, and your sweetener. And help get the ice extra cold, use a little bit of salt. And this is the same salt that I used when I made my sandwich and I went to the Pacific Ocean to make. So add some salt to the ice to help lower the freezing point. And then for the actual ice cream, a very simple recipe that I'm doing. It's just the goat's milk and maple syrup. So I'm just gonna do kind of a rough 2-to-1 ratio of milk to syrup. Just give that a little mix, get it evenly distributed. Add a bag of ice. And shake. Okay. Hands are a bit cold now, but looks like I got some ice cream. Turned out pretty good.
And now that I have both my ice cream and root beer, I can unite them to make my root beer float.
So after this long and difficult journey, I finally have everything to enjoy my root beer float. Oh wow, I think I actually made something that tastes good.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out other content we have covering a wide variety of topics. Also, if you've enjoyed these series, consider supporting us on Patreon. We are largely a fan-funded channel and depend on the support of our viewers in order to keep our series going. Thanks for watching.